Welcome to the workshop for the Creative Communities Research Network on Evangelicals and Dissenters. My name is David Higgins. I'm Associate Professor in English Literature at the University of Leeds, and I'm also Principal Investigator of the Creative Communities Research Network, and this is one of the events within that network. I'll say a bit about that in a few minutes, but I'm just going to pass over to Geoffrey Forster, who's head of the Leeds Library, who's going to say a bit about the library and its connections to the project.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Well, welcome to the Leeds Library. We're absolutely delighted and honoured to be associated with this event and to host today's conference. Unfortunately, of course, I've got to start with a warning and tell you all about fire escapes and things. So we're not expecting an alarm, but if one were to occur, you should go out the way you've come in, but there is an alternative fire escape behind us, and staff will help you. And we congregate between Monsoon and Virgin out in the front. So if you know Central Leeds, work your way back to there. But otherwise, have a wonderful day. We might not appear today to be a hotbed of Leeds enlightenment. In fact, those of you who know Leeds might be surprised to hear those two words put together at all. But libraries like ours were engines of enlightenment and change, and even revolution, as our colleagues at the Linen Hall Library can testify in Belfast. Their second librarian was executed for being involved in a United Orangemen rebellion. He was imprisoned the first time and executed the second time when he was caught, and seditious meetings were held at the Linen Hall Library. No librarian of ours has so far been executed, and no rebellions have been planned here as far as we know, but the early membership was full of people involved in the rapid development of Leeds, including, as you're probably aware, leading Dissenters and Anglicans, at least one Quaker, local politicians and leading members of the cloth trade, printers and newspaper proprietors, owners of potteries and coal mines, founders of cloth halls in the Leeds-Liverpool Canal, amateur scientists, and even women. 4 of the original 104 members were women, and that wasn't entirely usual in subscription libraries of this kind. And I think by 1793, when we had 460 members, 60 of them were women. So that was quite an interesting aspect of the Leeds Library. There were at least 2 people who reached national attention and who remained friends all their lives. One was John Lee, a Rockinghamite lawyer who became eventually Attorney General under Rockingham himself, and then Solicitor General under Shelburne. He was part of Admiral Keppel's defence team and is commemorated, if you want to see him, in the mausoleum at Wentworth Woodhouse. His friend was no other than Joseph Priestley, whose financial well-being Lee was very concerned with, and when he left Shelburne's employ in 1780, he even offered to arrange a government pension for him, but Priestley turned that down. Was their acquaintance cemented by their mutual interest in the Leeds Library? If you look at the Birmingham Library, a large number of the Lunar Society members were also members of the library, so they were places in which people could meet and swap ideas as well as borrow books. Priestley arrived as Minister of Mill Hill, the new minister, in 1767, but he was not the only leading figure from that chapel of importance. The Fentons, the Walkers, the Rayners and the Woolriches were also strong and numerous supporters of the library. Most significantly, perhaps, the Oates family. George Oates was the chapel's chief trustee, and his support would probably have been crucial both to Priestley as minister and Priestley as library secretary and president. We've actually put a catalogue out on your chair, which shows the acquisition in the year that Priestley was president of the library, the second year of the library. This was actually discovered, and they've allowed us to use it as we wish. It was discovered at Gilbert White's house down in Hampshire, and in fact the Oates family, who preserved a vast number of the library's catalogues, that wouldn't have survived other than their retention of them. The Leeds City Library copies have Oates bookplates in them. They discovered several years ago now these copies of the annual supplements. The library was very interesting and innovative in that it allowed open access to shelves, members chose the books, and they printed lots of catalogues so people could take them home and choose books at home and send their servants or their children to go and collect the books themselves. It was almost, until we went online in 2001, that was the first time members could sit at home and look at books and choose them without coming into the library, since we'd stopped printing catalogues in the 1930s. This survives. This is one snapshot of the library's acquisitions, and the Oaks who decamped from Meanwood Side down to Shelburne preserved these, and then they gave their house eventually to the Gilbert White Society, and it's in their archives at our library catalogues. And some of the new subscription library catalogues that Becky is interested in, they're only again surviving down in Hampshire, of all places. Priestley left Leeds in 1773, but his replacement both as minister and the holder of share number 4, ticket number 4, was William Wood, the new minister of Mill Hill. And again, it says the significance of Mill Hill's influence that he became president in his very first year at the Leeds Library. I was going to show you a slide. I'll put it up later. The one bit of Priestley we've got is his signature in the annual, in the minute book, and it's crossed out sadly, and William Wood's written in above it. That practice died out fairly quickly, but sadly it didn't die out before Priestley's name was crossed out in our minute book. Priestley himself, as you probably know, eventually moved to Birmingham, and angry disagreements at that library there helped to foment the destruction that towards the Priestley riots in July 1791. William Turner, a friend of Priestley and a leading local dissenter, lists the disagreements of the library amongst the causes of the church and state mob destroying dissenting meeting houses and dissenting homes, including his own. Of course, having a dinner at Dudley's Hotel to celebrate the fall of the Bastille didn't help matters, and Priestley's admission of his corruptions of Christianity into the library helped to separate the Dissenters and the Anglicans in Birmingham. Leeds seemed to have been a bit of a quieter place than Birmingham and Belfast, and in fact by the time of Farrington, the artist's visit in the very early years of the 19th century, we'd become known as the anti-Jacobin library, and the breakaway new subscription library is the Jacobin library. We're not entirely sure how that was reflected in the membership. Not at present entirely sure, but I'm sure, and in the collection, but we're hoping that Rebecca, as her PhD comes together, that will be one of the things that perhaps will begin to show itself. Certainly the dissenting ministers on the committee by the early years of the 19th century had disappeared, and Anglican ministers had come to predominate. Nearly a quarter of a millennium after the library's opening on 1st of November 1768, we're still here, and I think Priestley would be pleased, especially as we appear to be surviving the public library system. He would probably have been disturbed, as Edward Baines was in the Leeds Mercury, when Dean Hook and the Puseyite High Church took over in the 1860s, though I'm sure he would have enjoyed the chance to argue with them. He seems to quite like a good argument with people. He would certainly have computerised long before we did. He would have reached out actively to younger readers long before we have, and he would probably have abandoned proprietorship for charitable status long before we did in 2008. That, though, secured the library as a library for everyone's benefit, and one that could not be disposed of as a piece of property, as many other libraries historically were. He would be pleased by this event, though, I'm sure, as would his fellow founding members. They wanted the library to be an honour to Leeds, and we're determined to raise its profile and to make it better known and better used. As it happens, we're on the brand new Leeds Trinity Centre's map, so that probably we have finally arrived, at least in the eyes of Leeds shoppers. We are committed to preserving this wonderful collection and the purpose-built library building, but it is not only preservation, as I'm sure you're aware. It is using them to remind people of the value and interest and pleasure in using printed material in settings like this. The value of a quiet space where you can read the whole book and not just grab quotes for a piece of work. We are committed to being part of the community and participating with the universities, colleges and schools, local societies and even shopping centres. We are committed to being a centre for research. We want people in Leeds to know about their library and to be proud of the oldest cultural organisation they have, and the oldest surviving library of its type in the country. We were a founding member of the Association of Independent Libraries in 1989, and together with other similar institutions, we are determined to use our very institutions to remind people much further afield why libraries were founded and why they need to be retained alongside Google Books and our Kindles. My staff would laugh at that, because I don't have a Kindle. My colleagues, sorry. Events like this help to make us better known and to keep alive the revolutionary excitement that inspired the first members at their first meetings in August 1768. I know you're in for a fascinating day, and I shouldn't delay that day any longer. I'll just finish by saying that I hope you will enjoy your day in the library and that you will feel welcome to return. if you think it can help you in the future. Take a look at our website for more information. And if you want to visit the dark and incommodious garret that was our first home above Joseph Ogle's bookseller's shop, he being our first librarian, wander left out of here at lunchtime. Don't be tempted by the new Trinity Centre, but cross Briggate, and on your left, after your narrow Fish Street, you will come to Superdrug. When Ben Franklin visited the Priestley's in May 1771, Priestley almost certainly took him to see his new library, because of course Franklin had founded the Library Company of Philadelphia in 1741. So it tickles me that when you go into Superdrug, you are retracing the steps not only of Joseph Priestley, but Benjamin Franklin. Perhaps you'll find time to have a look at lunchtime. So welcome again. Thanks to David for involving us in this, and have a brilliant day.
Thanks a lot, Geoffrey. I'll do some more formal thank yous towards the end of the day, but I would like to thank Geoffrey and his colleagues at the Leeds Library, who've been incredibly flexible and positive and helpful in organising this event. The School of English and the Faculty of Arts at Leeds already have some connections to Leeds Library, but I think we're keen to develop those more in the future and have more events and get our students more involved with the library's resources and so on, because it is a great resource, I think, for the university and for the city. I won't talk for long, but I just want to say a little bit about the context of this event and the project. So I'm principal investigator of a research network called Creative Communities 1750 to 1830, funded by the AHRC. Professor John Whale is my co-investigator. And the aim of the network, put briefly, is to examine how what one might call creativity, or perhaps rather differently cultural production, can be seen as a communal rather than an individualistic process. So how do groups, it could be a collaboration of two people, or a household, or a much more complicated network of distributors, publishers and so on, or a religious community, how do they find ways of collaborating in order to produce different forms of culture? That's the aim of the project. There are specific reasons, I suppose, why the period 1750 to 1830 is a good period for thinking about those sorts of things. It's a period in which ideas of genius and sort of individualistic ideas of genius start coming to the fore, ideas that we still live with to some extent. It's also a period in which lots of now very significant cultural institutions, including the Leeds Library, were founded. The project involves 3 two-day workshops, one at Leeds, this one, and then one at UCL, one of our partner institutions, on metropolitan institutions, and then one at Southampton, Chorlton, on regional and national networks. And we wanted to have this first event in Leeds and to focus on religious communities, because as Geoffrey was alluding to, and as you all know very well, dissenting communities in particular were at the sort of, in many ways, at the sort of cultural avant-garde, I suppose, in the late 18th century. They were driving forward all kinds of cultural forms, literary genres, new forms of educational institution, and so on. There isn't as large an evangelical component to this lineup as there might have been, but I think it's important as well to think about that Dissenters were not the only creative force in British culture in the period. And there were some very, from my specialism, there were some very important writers such as William Cooper particularly, but also Hannah More and others, whose creativity was, I think, very much fuelled by the religious networks that they were part of. So that's the sort of context of this day. And I hope that what we're doing by having this event, there was an event in the school yesterday which was smaller, but will be available via the web in sort of mediated form of podcasts. But I think having this event outside the school and in the Leeds Library is a way of bringing in new ideas and perhaps people who are from outside the university, which is really important. And actually, as an academic, and I think everybody feels that academia reaches out more and more and learns more and more from people within the local community. So I'm hoping that something like that will happen today. One more thing. this event is being recorded, as you will have noticed. I believe that you've all had warning about that via email. If anybody is not comfortable and doesn't want their face included in the recording, I only want this side of my face, then do let Tess know, and she can make sure that your editor's out. There might be a little bit of distraction occasionally with Tess running around changing cameras, but hopefully they'll sort of merge into this. You'll just be distracted by the beauty of the room and the white-hot intellect of the speakers, and the cameras will no longer be a problem. And we will edit it very carefully, and it will be made available online when we can, and we'll let you all know about that. So it's a way of giving today. I hope it will work in its own terms as a one-off event, but hopefully there'll also be a legacy from it, and some of the ideas and discussions are things that we can return to in the future. Finally, I do want to keep to time, especially as lunch isn't until 1:30, and not like, my stomach will start going from about 11:30. So there might not be an enormous amount of time for questions at the end of each panel, though there will be some time. But there is a discussion session at the end of the day, and there'll be plenty of time, for everybody to contribute then if they so wish. Okay, thanks very much. Hope you enjoy the day.